So there's a lot of back and forth depending on which side of the aisle today. But the most important point I want to make regarding the special counsel John Durham's testimony was, what was the scope of the investigation? This is what the Democrats sought to convolute this morning. Now, according to Durham's own report, was the opening of the Crossfire hurricane as a full investigation on July 31st, 2016, consistent with how the FBI handled other intelligence it had received prior to July 31st, 2016. In a nutshell, Durham's only purview was to find out if the Russian collusion investigation by Robert Mueller into the Trump campaign had any merit whatsoever. Whether the likes of the FBI leaders like James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, whether they opened an investigation knowing there was no evidence of collusion. Now, Durham made these conclusions very clear this morning.
As we said in the report, our findings were sobering. The problems identified in this report, anybody who actually reads the report and the details of the report, the documented portions of the report, I think would find that the problems identified in the report are not susceptible to overnight fixes.
Let me say that again. Not subjected to overnight fixes, which is exactly the concern that nearly every critic of the Mueller investigation articulated from day one. That the problem was so deeply entrenched into our justice system and the upper levels of our government that there is almost nothing anyone can do to prevent this type of corruption. Think about this. A political campaign paid for information to be funneled into the highest levels of the government using unsubstantiated evidence, and even worse, erroneous media reports on that unsubstantiated evidence to prosecute an opponent in the opposing political party. Think about that. Durham today was asked point blank, was there any evidence of Russian interference in the 2016 election prior to opening the investigation into the soon-be President Donald Trump?
And let me stop you. When the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane, that's the issue at hand, it did not have any information that anyone in the Trump campaign had ever been in contact with Russian intelligence officials. Isn't that right?
As we wrote in the report, we talked to the director of the CIA, the deputy director of the CIA, the director of NSA, and people within the FBI, and there was no such information that they had in their holdings at the time they opened Crossfire Hurricane.
So in other words, nobody in the FBI, the CIA, or anywhere else in the federal government had spoken to a single Russian source, nor did they have any evidence at their disposal to launch an investigation against the Republican nominee for president.
Think about that. The FBI never talked to the people who gave them the intelligence information. They never examined their own witnesses. They never interviewed the witnesses. They never corroborated the dossier. Mr. Durham, if the FBI had done these things, if they had done their homework, would it have found that its own Russian experts had no information about President Trump being involved with Russian leadership or Russian intelligence officials?
Yes.
But you know who did? Fusion GPS. It's not debatable. Glenn Simpson and Christopher Steele did in fact meet with a Russian attorney, Natalia Veselnitskaya, before and after she was sent to Trump Tower to meet with Don Jr. Keep in mind, the meeting was set up as a recommendation to Don Jr. on the basis of a potential real estate endeavor. I know this for a fact. That Don Jr. actually shot down the real estate deal because he wasn't interested in it whatsoever. We also know that there are text messages from Don during this meeting, wondering why this meeting was set up in the first place because it seemed irrelevant. Nevertheless, Democrats cited this Trump Tower meeting as a source of Russian collusion during the Mueller probe, conveniently leaving out the fact that it was facilitated by Hillary Clinton's campaign via Fusion GPS, not the Republicans. And Adam Schiff, who is facing a censure vote tonight, like right now, for this exact mischaracterization of facts and evidence, continues to allege that there's some sort of collusion.
Something else.
Sure.
Don Jr., when offered dirt as part of what was described as a Russian government effort to help the Trump campaign, said, "If it's what you say, I love it." Would you call that an invitation to get Russian help with dirt on Hillary Clinton?
We just explained to you what that meeting was. So Adam Schiff, who accused Durham of not reading the Mueller report, clearly didn't read Durham's report, which is shorter, by the way. Adam Schiff, who claims the Durham report was a, quote, waste of taxpayer money simply because no one went to jail, is now making the case that someone, Don Jr., is guilty, someone who was never charged and never went to jail because there wasn't enough evidence, nor was there a crime committed, alleged by the Mueller report. Do you see the irony here? And this is what Democrats do all the time. I don't know if it's just because they're not smart enough to understand that there really was no Russian collusion in the Trump campaign, or if they just keep trying to keep the narrative alive. But to the point of not reading the report, you have representatives like Hank Johnson, who is still confused about why Guam hasn't capsized yet, trying to make this report seem like a failure for not indicting people, even though those who weren't in the scope of the investigation.
To the extreme disappointment of some on this panel, your investigation failed to produce indictments against Hillary Clinton, correct?
That's correct.
Didn't indict Barack Obama.
That's correct.
Didn't indict Joe Biden.
That's correct.
Couldn't even indict Hunter Biden.
We didn't
Correct.
investigate Mr. Hunter Biden.
This is one of the guys that thinks the Durham report, which cost $6 million, was a waste of money. But they could not care less about the fact that Democrats just lit $40 million on fire to investigate under Robert Mueller for a completely debunked matter that never should have been even started in the first place. The bottom line here, do I think it's ridiculous that people didn't go to jail for starting an investigation with known false information? Absolutely yes. Does it irk me to no end that basically nobody was held accountable? Of course it does. But John Durham presented himself as an extremely measured character that, unlike Democrats, doesn't use the process as the punishment. Now, let me leave you with this.
I have had any number of FBI agents who I've worked with over the years, some of them are retired, some are still in place, who have come to me and apologized for the manner in which that investigation was undertaken.
Well, says a lot about that.